Garnets, runes, grossular garnet, sliced in half to see its internal structure. Norse runes, almandine garnet, natural setting. High rope garnet, mythological design. The garnet's name derives from the word granatum, which means pomegranate, referring to the pomegranate seeds which garnets are sometimes compared to. Today we are going to take this pyrope garnet and create an Old Norse styled mythological based ring using runes in the design. Here I'm going to take a large flat bezel and I'm going to teach you how to layer the bezel so that we can have a depth allowing us to stamp runes completely around the gemstone setting. First, we're going to start by cutting the bezel, finding the rough shape. We want a little bit of wiggle room here, so we added a little extra length, but not much. Next, we need to match it with the shorter bezel. The short bezel is going to be where we layer for the stamps that we're going to put in place to make sure we have the thickness for our runes while not affecting the ability to set the stone at the end. So now we're applying a flux on the soldering table. We need a solder to hold the pieces of silver as one solid piece together. So we need to make sure the flux is flowed between every single bit of it. We press it together. This is a hard flux. It has to melt at a higher temperature, but it also means as we work the ring piece out of this, we're not going to run into the issue of this piece melting on us halfway through when we need to add or retract other components. I've had people mention to me that they've melted pieces of silver that they've been working on and they get a little bit intimidated because stuff like brass or copper, it's a lot easier to melt the solder because the solder is softer before the piece itself begins to melt. Well, if you watch here, I have it zooming in and slow. That way you can see at what point the level of redness that the glow of the silver is showing versus when the solder and the acid of the flux is beginning to activate. And you can see the solid pieces are not activating yet. They're not melting yet. There's just barely a surface trickle and boom, we're good. It takes a little bit of practice, but if you pay attention, you can get an eye for it really quickly. That is exactly the bond that we need. Now we've got it cooled and I have it set on the surface of a small anvil and we're ready to start stamping these runes into the side. Now I'm going to measure out to evenly space these runes throughout the piece. The gemstone is not perfectly round and it has a lot of natural flat facets on the sides, which allows this with the evenly spaced runes to wrap around it really nicely and display the runes as you face each side of the gemstone. We plan and prep this now because the moment this is the shape of the gemstone and ready to put on a ring is the moment it becomes extremely difficult to place any images into this silver. I line it up on my measured mark, stamp it, it's on the thick part of the bezel, and you can see there it imprinted very nicely. Having that extra depth makes all the difference when you're imprinting these images. And one after another, they turn out very nicely. There will be some small movement and warping because you are displacing metal when you are doing these imprints, but we can fix that afterwards. And keep in mind, all I am using here is the stamp, an anvil, and a small 8-ounce hammer. You don't need a lot of weight, or else you might actually damage your piece if you're pressing too hard. And the 8-ounce hammer is a metal hammer, so we can get a good strike on it, because quite often we use rawhide hammers when we're doing precious metals to not mar the surface, but a rawhide hammer isn't enough to get these indents to be the depth that we need them to be. Now this looks fantastic. Here we're going to just file up the edges, clean it up a bit, and we can start shaping it to go around the gemstone. Now with this custom made bezel, this part of the video is going to take a little bit longer, and I'm going to show you why. We have to go piece by piece and try our best to match the side facets of the gemstone. On a round or oval cabochon, you can wrap it around, set it, solder it together, and then it is just what it is. It's easy and quick. But what we need to do here is try our best to match these facets. The better the gemstone sits at the end with the final product, the better these runes are going to display, and the more it's going to have that really nice rustic feel to it. And that's really what we're aiming for. It's what we want. So as you can see here, we've got quite about where we need to be. File it up a little bit more just to clean it up. And there we go. I've soldered it together off camera, and I used graphite in the runes to keep them from having any solder bleed into them. And now we're ready to set up the back plate. This is going to hold the gemstone in place. It's also very important for the strength and structure of the ring. So I like to use 26 gauge silver. A lot of old timers I've met prefer 28 or even sometimes 30 gauge. I've found that 30 gauge is borderline flimsy and hard to manage. 28 gauge holds up well, but the 26, the extra thickness, it really adds a quality feel to the piece. A good solid piece of silver feels like an heirloom piece, feels like something you can wear forever and enjoy. So I really prefer going with that. I've marked my outline, cut out the outline, and you can see here, this is how the gemstone is going to sit. Very simple, very easy. Now we're going to set up the ring shank. It's going to be a simple half moon shank. So this is rounded on the outside and smooth on the inside. Of course, you can use any type of shank that you want. I'm prepping it on my ring mandrel here. I've got it measured out and I cut it. Now I have a smaller ring mandrel, and I like to really shape this at a smaller size and then stretch it to grow to where I need it to be. It makes the rounded feel really nice compared to having it be overly large and trying to force it into shape after it's been put together. Now we move it back over to our flat mandrel, and you can see here at a size 10, we have the perfect spacing for the gemstones cup. That's how it'll sit. You'll see the gemstone would sit just nicely. Now we're going to solder the back plate. I've used a decent amount of flux here, and we've put graphite into each rune using a pencil. Doing this, we're going to spare ourselves any headache of potential solder running into those runes. Having a deep groove like that, solder likes to flow into gaps or spaces, and that's a good thing. We use it to our advantage all of the time. But in this instance, if one of these runes filled with solder, it would be quite a headache to deal with. So I'm setting up a line along the bottom so solder doesn't want to move up, and I set up graphite in all of the runes to hold it into place. Now I'm going to snip my solder. This is a medium solder. It'll melt easier than that hard solder, but it still holds up rigidity when we go to put the shank on later. I'm putting on the inside of the cup here around the bezel, and the reason why I want it on the inside is so that it melts and flows into the seam rather than being on the outside where it has the potential to flow upward over the outside of the bezel. Now we'll fire it here, and you can see at what point the solder is going to flow again, just like earlier. And it ran all the way around. That went fantastic. Straight into the pickle here. This will remove any of the oxide layer that's formed on the outside. Now we're going to snip away all of this excess silver. It's good, especially with these wider, more unique bezels, to have a little bit of a buffer zone on your silver for room for things to move and bond. If we had it straight up to the edge, there might be the potential for there to be a small gap when the silver solder flowed where it wouldn't have bonded completely. Now I'm setting this on a post here. I've got it upside down. That way on the back of the ring, I can set a 925 stamp for sterling silver. And I can also put in place a maker's mark, which in this case, I like to use SF for silver forge. I may eventually have a blacksmithing video where I forge out a custom maker's mark, but for now, SF will do just fine. We're gonna go and we're gonna fire on the shank. We already had that prepped before. And as you can see, we have a decent amount of the solder on both sides of the shank. We have the shank coming to the right on the outer edge, and it's an easy solder, so it melts before the medium or hard solders, and it bonded right up the shank by heating up the ring before we heated up the cup. We're applying liver of sulfur here, and this is going straight into all of the runes. This is going to darken them up and cause them to patina. So before we polish, we do this, and then after the polish, this whole ring is going to have these runes with really dark, bold lines, while the rest of the ring is a nice, shiny, silvery polish. This is 2 hours later, and you can see everything is quite a bit darker. And now we're ready to clean it off. And we're going to use a small disc, sanding disc. This is going to clean up any edges or rough spots on the ring before we start polishing. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to break any hard edges. I want it to have a slight roundedness to the back plate. That way when you slide the ring on or off, or if you move the ring around, it doesn't feel like there's anything jabbing into you. It just feels nice and silky smooth. And you can see here, after the fact, we've removed a lot of the material that was causing an external patina. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take this ring mandrel and we're going to really clean up this shank. It was very warped, not quite so round after the firing. And here we'll have it nice and a perfect fit. It fits nicely and it feels nice. Now we're going to start the actual polish. This is using a 300 grit bristle disc. This one is going to do a minor amount of shaping. It will make edges softer and more rounded, but it's also going to remove the patina that we don't want and really clean up the surface. See, I'm going around every inch of this thing. I want to hit absolutely every bit of it. It's going to make this thing look amazing and immaculate. This is definitely worth the time that it takes. Polishing is certainly the unsung hero of jewelry making. A lot of people don't talk about it, but you're going to spend as much time polishing as you do making. But if you do that, if you actually spend the time to polish it well, it will look positively beautiful. I'm happy with the results so far. Let's set the stone. Now you can see here all the work we put on earlier to get that bezel at the exact shape of the outer perimeter of these facets is going to pay off really big right now. Because of that, we're able to get this stone set in nice and snug so it looks fantastic and it'll fit really well. It won't move or wiggle, any rattling or shaking won't happen, and it's gonna make the stone more secure, which keeps it safer. This stone is protruding out of the ring, so it has a much more vulnerability. If you were to smack it on something and it had any give, that give could allow it to split or crack easier than it being very solid and set in place. Now, because we have the two layers on the bezel, that top layer that's from the taller bezel behind behind, that's gonna be what really holds this stone. We're really gonna go around with this plexi tool and we're working it into place very thoroughly, and it will turn out just how we want it. Now we're gonna clean it up with this little hand polishing cloth. It's just gonna take out any extra patina that's left and really make it shine. Thank you so much for sticking around. If you like these builds or want to see future projects, please subscribe. I will happily make more for you. And without further ado, let's see how our Norse mythology based ring turned out. If these are the kind of builds you want to see, please let me know. I'll be sure to do more in the future. So here we are. I really like how this turned out. It feels to me like something you could find in the world of Tolkien or World of Warcraft even, or just any RPG style ancient ring that would give you like a +5 to protection, you know, something good like that. And I really like that vibe. The garnet in the center, it has some dark spots in it and then some really bright red, which I love the variation in color. It really looks good. At the time of editing this video, I've already made a couple different versions of this ring. I'm not gonna make full videos on them because this one serves plenty purpose for showing how to do the build, but I will definitely show probably reels of how those turned out. They're slightly different and I like that they're all somewhat unique. The other ones, I've put a shank on them that's quite a bit larger. There's even some runes going down the shank to feel more classy style, I guess you would say, where this is like a basic ring with like the bezel being the really big showpiece. The other ones, it's like the whole piece is a showpiece. There's a lot more going on without having to take so many steps to do so. But overall, I would say this is a fantastic success. I love making stuff like this. I love making unique original pieces, and I hope that you liked this recipe. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.